We have a new TSN trade bait board to talk about in today's video. I reacted to one of these probably about a month ago, but that particular list only had, I think, 20 or 25 names included. However, this updated version has 50 names on the board, so instead of going through every single name and talking about them like we usually do with this kind of thing, in this video, I'm just going to highlight the more surprising and intriguing names on the list and give you guys my thoughts on them, because the majority of players on the trade bait board we've already talked about. We know they're likely going to get dealt. But if you do want to see the entire list, I will leave a link to it down in the top of the description so you guys can go check it out if you'd like. The first player I want to talk about is a guy whose name I really haven't seen brought up in trade rumors at all this season until now, of course, seeing him on the trade bait board. And he's actually pretty high up on the list as well, number 26, ahead of the likes of Marc-Andre Fleury. It's goaltender Ilya Samsonov of the Washington Capitals. It's no secret that the Washington Capitals goaltending situation has been a little bit shaky this season. Ilya Samsonov is having a very mediocre season, rocking just a .901 save percentage. Vitek Vanacek has been better than Samsonov, but hasn't been good enough to solidify himself as the surefire starter for the Washington Capitals. It was rumored a couple of months ago that the Washington Capitals were pursuing Marc-Andre Fleury, but Fleury wouldn't accept a trade to Washington. Samsonov has also dealt with his fair share of injury problems throughout his short career so far. I think he was actually injured in practice yesterday as well. They recently called up Zach Fucale. So factoring in all of that, it seems to me that the Capitals may be looking to shake up their goaltending situation a little bit if Samsonov is indeed available for trade. Although he isn't having a great season and last year was a bit of a struggle for him as well, I still think, given his age and his reputation before coming to the NHL, there would be a decent amount of teams interested. You know, it seems like just yesterday that Shesterkin, Samsonov, and Sorokin were all still playing in the KHL, and everyone was, kind of speculating which one would be the best of the three. One team that I feel like if Samsonov is available should definitely take a crack at it is a team that's been brought up a lot when it comes to acquiring a goaltender at the deadline, and that is of course the Edmonton Oilers. Although Mikko Koskinen and the Oilers have been a lot better of late, I still am not all that confident in a Koskinen-Smith tandem going into the postseason. Obviously, Marc-Andre Fleury has been linked to the Edmonton Oilers basically all season long in terms of trade talks, but part of me feels like Samsonov could be a better option. He's much cheaper in terms of his salary cap. I believe he only makes $2 million this year. He's also an RFA at the end of this season, so you still own his rights. He's not going to become a UFA like Marc-Andre Fleury, and we don't even know if Marc-Andre Fleury plans to play in the NHL past this season. So the fact that Samsonov could potentially be a long-term solution in net for the Edmonton Oilers would have to be pretty intriguing, I think. I'd be interested to see what the Washington Capitals would expect as a return for Samsonov. A comparable maybe would be Alex Nedeljkovic and what Detroit gave up to acquire him in the offseason, which was basically nothing, and that was after Nedeljkovic had a year in which he was one of the best goaltenders in the league. Obviously, Samsonov has been struggling a little this year, so I can't imagine Washington's asking price for him would be insanely high at this point in time. I'm interested to see what happens with him. Obviously, it's no surefire thing that the Capitals do trade Ilya Samsonov, but just seeing his name on this list surprised me, and especially considering it was so high up with him being at number 26. The next player I want to talk about is a Vancouver Canuck, but not the Vancouver Canuck you might expect who's been in trade rumors for the past couple of weeks. This one is actually Connor Garland. He's number 23 on this installment of the TSN trade bait board. There are other Canucks on the list as well. JT Miller is at number 25. We talked about him and the trade rumors on the channel at length, so I won't get into that. Brock Besser is actually number 22, one spot ahead of Connor Garland. We talked about him recently on the channel as well, but to me it is a little bit surprising to see Connor Garland on this list. Obviously, they just acquired him in the most recent offseason. He's in the midst of his first season as a Vancouver Canuck, and he's playing pretty well. He's got 30 points in 50 games despite playing only around 16 minutes a night. He's scoring at a 20-goal pace. He's obviously been the best asset of the two the Canucks got in that big trade that took place in the offseason, acquiring him and Oliver Ekman-Larsson. So I'm pretty curious as to why Connor Garland is on this list and if he actually is actively being shopped by the Vancouver Canucks, because you consider the fact that they gave up a first-round pick, a second-round pick, they took on Ekman-Larsson's contract just to bring in Connor Garland, and obviously to get rid of those three bad contracts as well. But I feel like if you trade Connor Garland at this point, and it's not for a king's ransom, it makes the OEL trade look a lot worse, especially when you consider the fact that Garland has been good for the Canucks this season, and he's very cost controlled, making just $4.95 million a season through the 2025-26 season. He's only 25. I feel like this is a player the Canucks should probably hold on to, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. The Vancouver Canucks, I feel like by far are the most intriguing team leading up to the trade deadline. Obviously, Besser, Miller, and Garland on this trade bait board, and they're only, I think, 5 points out of a wildcard spot right now. It's going to be really interesting to see what direction the Vancouver Canucks decide to head, because if you trade one of Garland, Besser, or Miller leading up to the deadline, you're basically packing it in for the season and giving up on the playoff race unless you get a player in return who can help the team win now. But I feel like the most likely return for any of those three players would be some combination of draft picks and prospects. The next intriguing player I want to talk about on the trade bait board is a player pretty low down, number 48, but it's Nils Lundkvist, defenseman for the New York Rangers. A second round pick by the New York Rangers in 2018, had a record-breaking season in the SHL in 2019-20. He's gotten his first taste of NHL action this season. He's appeared in 25 games for the Rangers, has 4 points in those 25 games, obviously is playing heavily sheltered minutes when he's in the lineup, averaging under 14 minutes of ice time per game. His underlying numbers so far have been decent. This is a player who definitely still has the upside of being a very good top 4 defenseman in the NHL one day. And basically what I gather from Nils Lundkvist being on this list is a lot of people expect and want the New York Rangers to go all in at the trade deadline, and a lot of people think they should. I'm kind of in that boat as well. I think they're in a very ideal situation to go out and make a big splash at the deadline, but I can't imagine they want to move one of Capo Caco or Alexis Lafreniere or a guy like Keandre Miller, who's been a mainstay and a very steady defender in the lineup as well. So I feel like if you want to get one of the big fishes at the trade deadline without giving up one of the three players that I just mentioned, you're likely going to have to include somebody like a Nils Lundkvist. So I feel like that is probably the biggest reason why we see him on this list. Him and goaltender Alexander Georgiev are actually the only Rangers of the 50 names on the list. I'm a little bit surprised Vitaly Kravtsov's name didn't make an appearance. Obviously, he requested a trade from the Rangers. He's overplaying in the KHL this season. I feel like it's highly likely if the Rangers make a big trade, Kravtsov's probably included just so they can kind of right that ship and be done with it. But yeah, Nils Lundkvist, definitely one of the more intriguing names on the TSN trade bait board for me. And now for the final player we'll talk about in this video, he's number 32 on the TSN trade bait board, and that is Pavel Zacha of the New Jersey Devils. The Devils' 6th overall pick from the 2015 NHL draft. Really, his first 4 seasons in the NHL were pretty underwhelming, and kind of after his 3rd year, we started to hear a lot of trade rumors revolving Pavel Zacha. Maybe this is a player who needs a fresh start, a new opportunity with another team. Obviously, that didn't happen, and then Pavel Zacha kind of finally broke out offensively last season. He had 17 goals, 35 points in 50 games, scored well above a 20-goal pace. However, this season, we've kind of seen him take a little bit of a step back from last season. With 1 more game played this year, he's got 9 less points, 4 less goals. His defensive game has been incredibly poor, which I would say is a little bit concerning considering when he was drafted, he was really advertised as being a very good two-way forward. So with the season Pavel Zacha is having, and considering he's going to be an RFA at the end of the season, he's up for a new deal, I feel like maybe the New Jersey Devils are just ready to move on, and that's why we see him on this trade bait board. Obviously, given where the Devils are in the standings and the season that they've had, they're not going to be anywhere near a playoff spot. They're not going to be a team looking to buy at the trade deadline. I feel like a Pavel Zacha trade would more just be a change of scenery and to kind of shake things up, and I really do feel like there would be a handful of teams interested considering Zacha is 25 and he scored at well above a 20-goal pace last season. He has shown flashes of being a really solid offensive player. The consistency really just hasn't been there. So for me, he's definitely a really intriguing name on this list. Not a guy you're probably going to see a contender go out and go after to try to bolster their team for a playoff run, but maybe a guy a team like the Buffalo Sabres, the Detroit Red Wings, the Ottawa Senators could go after and potentially buy low and maybe have him wind up being a part of their future. So that is going to wrap up today's video. Those were, in my opinion, some of the more intriguing names on the most recent installation of the TSN trade bait board. I will say it's a lot more fun when there's 50 names on this list as opposed to there being 20 and 25 like there were on the more recent ones. Like I said at the start of the video, if you want to see the entire list, I will leave a link to it down below at the top of the description. If you guys enjoyed this video and you want to see more trade discussion and things like this leading up to the deadline, which is coming up pretty soon, then be sure to drop a like. That is the best way to show your support. And most importantly, if this was your first time checking out the channel and you want more NHL content just like this, be sure to hit that subscribe button, and I'll talk to you all soon.